call this meeting to order. Let's go through this stuff. Notice is given of a workshop meeting of the Board of Directors of the district to be held at 105 Port Isabel, Port Road, Port Isabel, Texas on April 14th at the hour 4:30 p.m. for consideration of the business agenda below. This notice is posted at the office of the district on April 9th, 2021 at 1 p.m. in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act. I call the meeting to order. We have a quorum. Our chairman is not present today. He had out of town business. And we will stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And Father, again, we thank you for a wonderful day you made for us, Lord. We just ask you to give us all wisdom, our eyes, our minds, and our hearts to look into all the agenda items, so we can make all the best decisions for our customers, for our youth, and that we can move forward together as a team. And we thank you again for everything in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thanks, Carlos. Item agenda 3, discuss the Seawater Desalination Facility. I think we're all agreed. Let's do it. Agenda item 4.
So the status of our seawater desalination facility. I like the mics, so I'll try to pace myself.
Stereo.
Hopefully I won't be speaking too fast. So of course we had that letter of intent that we had sent out to the Corps of Engineers, and they did get funded internally to start preparing that scope of work. So they should be giving us the first draft of what their analysis is going to be by the end of the month, to be looking at an open intake and industrial discharge here in Port Isabel. And then so the other part of the Seawater project is getting that letter to the Attorney General to relocate the site from South Padre Island to Port Isabel. And we have Jorge Arroyo with the Christi have been working on that letter for us. And I mean, there's really, I suppose we can dive into, is this a presentation on both projects or?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I guess we can dive into the Christi presentation. It'll cover both the items 3 and 4.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. I don't think I've had the pleasure of meeting you before. I know you're chairman. Been coming to Laguna Madre for a long time, in the last 30 years. One of my bucket list items is to find a week stretch of time to come here and go kite surfing. So, Mr. Galvan, if you can find a week workshop, I'll be glad to come.
I know a good guy who teaches it if you need it, for real.
Yeah.
Let me know. Yeah.
I will talk.
Yeah.
And I'm serious is one of the things that I would like to do. So do I need to point this here to advance it, or does it matter? Okay, we have been working with Mr. Ortiz. He asked us to come and talk to you about seawater desalination and reuse. And he said that you like to ask questions throughout the presentation, so that's where we're prepared to do that. We're pretty laid back on just a deck of slides to keep the conversation going, but just feel free to interrupt us. With me is Juan Bujanos. He is our account director for this region, and Jason Cochran. Jason is the project manager for the Corpus Christi Seawater Desal project. And we will be team tagging.
You guys fire Charles or what? That guy always jumps on board for a trip down south, man. I'm like, what in the world's going on? Sorry, go ahead.
So let's see, I think I went to, how do I go back? So this is how we have structured this deal. Start by talking about why we're doing this workshop. Not too technical, but talk a little bit about membrane treatments, because that's what we're using here. Talk about the project stages and seawater desalination and reuse, getting to the specifics of what Charles has been asking us to do. Let's go to the next. So in terms of the goals for this workshop, when we participate in this type of events, often it's about getting direction. it works both ways. It's getting a sense of where the organization is going with this thing that you're considering, and providing direction to your staff and your consultants as to where you want to set your priorities. So, in general, that's what this workshops are about. But in your case, it's more about that reliability. Still, it's about the reliability of the water supply. I'm not going to tell you stuff that you don't know already about surface water vulnerability. And so you need to, for the sake of your customers, you need to build a portfolio of reliable water supplies. Of course, desalination is the ultimate drought-proof source. But in the meantime, there are some other things that you could do to stretch your supplies. So in terms of organizing the district's efforts, some of the things that we can discuss today is the timing of the projects that you're looking at, that we use in the desal. Talk about project financing. We have somebody on the wings. Mark Evans is ready to be patched in, and we get into the nuts and bolts. But we can do enough damage ourselves if we get into it. And then talk about next steps. So does that sound like a reasonable set of expectations?
Absolutely.
Work? Okay, let's go to the next. So we're talking about membrane water treatment. And this is this has been around for some time, but it's becoming a more common tool for water treatment. And it's a pretty nifty tool. And in this pipe that you see here, we're illustrating different types of membranes, starting with microfiltration, going all the way to reverse osmosis. The farther you go in, the more stuff you're removing from the water. The farther you go in, the more sophisticated, the more expensive the treatment, the more energy you're going to have to use. So you are already using microfiltration, right? One of your water treatment plants, and you are also entering the water treatment plant upgrades. So you're already doing microfiltration. And with reuse, you're probably going to go all the way to reverse osmosis, although there is a chance that you don't have to go that far. That would be a design kind of issue. But so this is the array of membranes that we're looking at. So advantages of membranes. Why does it make sense for water suppliers to look at this type of thing? Well, for one, it gives you a pretty consistent water quality. With surface water treatment plants, we've been doing that a long time, and we have it down. But in situations where you have big changes in the water quality that you're treating, membranes are very good because they're always going to give you the same kind of. So it's an advantage. Key for water utilities is this industrial nature of the membrane type of water treatment. This is like modular, so you can add additional capacity as your demand increases, as your cash flow allows. You can go back, you can add more trains, and so that works real well. You can do some of the components for the ultimate capacity. For example, a Seawater desal facility. If you're going to build an intake, I know you're looking into that with the board, you probably want that built for the ultimate capacity. But the actual treatment, you don't need to do that. You need to spend all the money until you have the demand. That's going to help you pay for that. Kind of tied with that is the space efficiency. You don't need a big footprint. You can do the same water treatment with just a fraction of the space, as you are seeing with your changes in the water treatment plant number 1. So that's another key advantage. Disadvantage, well, it's going to be a little bit more expensive. It's going to use more energy. It's going to be more costly on the capital side and the operation and maintenance side. There are some trade-offs. And the next slide illustrates what's happening with the energy aspect of this. One of the things that is happening with membrane treatment is that it is very competitive. You have manufacturers that are constantly upgrading the products. So it is often said in the industry that 5 years, you're going to have an entire new generation of membranes. One of the best ways to look at how this has improved, this graph here, I've used it a lot because it focuses on the energy that is required to desalinate seawater. So on the vertical axis, you see kilowatts hour per cubic meter of water produced. And of course, on the horizontal axis is time, going back to 1970 to today. And you can see that that is pretty dramatic. It's a 77% reduction in energy use since 1970 to 2020. And we all know that energy is one of the largest cost items in seawater desalination. So I bring that, and I'm not going to go any farther. This is as technical as we're going to get here. But it is indeed a tool that has improved a lot. It hasn't stopped improving. And as you see in that graph, it's been around for quite some time, so it's reliable. You're not taking any chances with this. So Jason is now going to talk about a seawater desalination that we're working here in Texas, the Corpus Christi seawater desalination. We brought that up because Corpus Christi, like you, has a water supply reliability. I'm going to still get under.
I thought he was gonna be fast like me. Funny. I'd be real scared. I can regurgitate what I think I just heard, but I can't take it any further.
Well, and Jorge asked me to highlight this project, and I'm sure y'all have seen it in the news and heard about it. I wondered how many hours I'd have to tell you about it, and Jorge said I have a few minutes. We've actually been working on this for 7 or 8 years now, just about to move into the implementation phase where we actually implement the project and go out to procurement. Like a lot of South Texas communities, water suppliers, Corpus Christi has done a really good job on conservation, a really good job of maximizing their surface water supplies. But they're still 100% surface water. Right now, they have one treatment plant, surface water plant, produces about 100 Mwd, and half of that goes to large volume users. So there's really significant base load of industries take about 50 Mwd, and then the region, about half of them people take that. Yeah. So they draw from 4 watersheds. Their farthest source is actually Colorado River, over 100 miles away, and that they've gone as far as they want to on surface water. So about 7 or 8 years ago, a group of stakeholders got together and decided that coming out of the drought, 2011, 2014, 2015, they had to start looking at an alternative for reliability. That they're not ever going to be 100% alternative water supply, just because that's expensive. But you really want a diverse portfolio to be able to supplement, so that you get close to your firm yield on surface water, you've got at least a portion of your supply that's guaranteed. And like Jorge mentioned, desalination is going to be your most drought-proof supply. Go ahead. When we started to develop the definition for the Corpus Christi seawater desalination program, we looked at this every which way and looked at demand centers, looked at existing infrastructure, built cost models, and ultimately decided on a program including 2 projects, so 2 seawater desalination plants. If you're familiar with the area at all, the south side of the bay is Nueces County, the north side of the bay is San Patricio County. So ultimately, the expectation is as demand grows, there would be 2 seawater desalination plants serving the coastal bend with a total ultimate capacity of about 80 million gallons a day production. Initially, though, we'll start with 1 plant, the southern plant there in Nueces County, with an initial production of 20 Mgd. And Jorge mentioned how these are modular. So we'll build the intake and the outfall to be able to accommodate the ultimate capacity. But initially, we'll only build the treatment for the demand. It's something that, if you see a need for production within the next 5 years, you want to build it now. But if not, advances in technology, particularly the expense of capital and O&M, you only want to build what you need. So for now, we're projecting that need to be about 20 Mgd, but that plant will be expandable to 30. So we can take in, another RO train and expand the pre-treatment to be able to get that extra 10 Mgd really efficiently. And the costs up front for the infrastructure are pretty nominal on the intake and the outfall, footprints of the buildings, those things.
Jason,
Yes, sir.
what are the end engineering costs over the last 8 years? Ballpark, you got to do that.
About 5 million, I think.
And what do you anticipate once you procure all the contractors and stuff, 20 MGD, facilitating that in the manner of which you're facilitating that, which you ballpark the price tag.
Total program, construction, all the way to producing water.
Everything, your large intakes for
Yeah.
future growth, the outflow that you referenced, the 20 MGD that you're, determining is a need now. What gets you that 20 MGD?
220 million. And that's construction and non-construction. So permitting, legal, environmental, everything.
Is it fair, I'm sorry to interrupt, is it fair
Yeah.
to say like simple math?
Yeah.
On 2 MGD or something, just take 220 and divide it by 20 and get to the number that way, or you understand what I'm saying? Or-
I do. It'd be easier to look at the cost of water
Okay.
because capital is a part of it, but then O&M is also a significant part. We're looking at $3 to $4 a thousand gallons. So if that helps you,
It does.
just on produced
Say
water,
that number again.
$3 to $4 per thousand gallons. And that includes debt service, O&M, everything.
Now, that's not to create, that's residual. That's what you're paying to create, right? Like, forgive me, reword that. It's been mentioned already by your colleague that energy is one of the largest costs when you take a project like this on, right? So is that $3 to $4 what I'm paying to produce 1,000 gallons? Once we've already paid to create the infrastructure?
No, that's all in. So that's debt service. After 30 years, if you've paid off the loan on the plant, financing on the plant, then you're just into O&M. It's less than $3 to $4.
So that 3 to 4 includes your own.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. So $3 to $4 a thousand, and I'm not mistaken there. Yeah, $3 to $4 a thousand to produce that water.
What do we pay right now, gentlemen?
The microfiltration and water plant fees about $1. Yeah, so more expensive, and that's why I say that Corpus Christi will never go 100% unless you're Israel or somewhere in Australia that has no water. You never want to be on this 100%. But as you know, in Corpus Christi's strategy is they want 10% of their supply in drought-proof water. So as 10% of their overall supply, that number makes sense. Much more than that, it really does start to impact the ratepayers. Part of the hours that I could go into talking about this, it's the large volume users have actually stepped up to the plate, and they're paying an extra $250,000 today and have been for a year and a half on all of the water they use just to help develop this supply and to help minimize the rate impact to residents, average ratepayers. So there's some cool things going on that the city's worked out. The industries don't do that. Out of the goodness of their hearts, they get something for it. At certain stage of drought where they used to be penalized with a surcharge, this is basically a surcharge exemption fee. So they don't get a surcharge if they use up to their allocation when they would have previously. So this is a little bit of insurance, but it helps the city start to develop that capital, and eventually that will pay for 2/3 the capital cost, the debt service on the so it really is a unique circumstance. It's a great way for the region to develop this water supply. And it's really, I know Jorge has been in this industry for a lot longer than I have, but it's one of the most elegant and unique parts of this project that we're doing for the city, is that the region has come together to help fund it and provide, an opportunity to move this forward. Anything else on that?
No.
Okay.
Thank you.
Go to the next one. On the implementation, I mentioned we've been doing this for quite a while already, and we don't expect to be producing water for another about 6 years. Between the first phase of doing that technical feasibility, figuring out siting, which I think you guys have a great head start on, and then moving into figuring out how you want to fund it. Corpus Christi is going with Texas Water Development Board SWIFT funding. They've been approved for the loan for $222 million to implement the full 20 MGD project. But after that, you've got to get into the permitting, both state and federal. There's a lot of headwind there to work against. The city's done a great job on that, made a lot of progress. We're just about to start core permitting, which we expect to be about 18 months. Got outreach on here on phase 2. Outreach has been an absolutely essential part of the project, and we can't start that early enough. So we've engaged a lot of local and state organizations. We've sat down with surf riders. We've sat down with the Coastal Conservation Association.
lots of other groups, just to make sure that we're listening to concerns and being able to put good information out there where right now there's a lot of misinformation out there. And then phase 3, which we're just about to step into, is procurement. The model that we expect, it's not decided yet, is going to be a design, build, operate procurement. So it'll be an RFQ, a shortlist teams, then an RFP to actually get the proposals to design, build, and construct the plant. The city will always own the plant, but for a period of time, we expect private operations and then a transition to city staff, or of course, the city could always extend that private contract. And then, like I said, we don't expect to be pumping water until 2027. So at that point, we'll be 13 or 14 years into this and just producing water out of that first plant. So to give you an idea of when you really need to start moving, this is what you're
It's an eye opener, to have that kind of foresight. Account for that much time. Having spent that much time in that project, have you run this race anywhere else? We're referencing the Corpus project.
This will be the first one for Texas. We've got folks on the team that have done this, both Tampa Bay,
California?
California, Tampa Bay, Saudi Arabia. We've got some team members who have global expertise in this, but this will be the first one for Texas. And that's why, our role with Christi Nichols is as the owner's representative. We've done water in Texas for over 120 years. We represent clients in Texas for over 120 years. So that's what we're good at. Walking along with the city through this process, doing the permitting, all of the due diligence, that's our niche, right? And then the procurement is going to be leveraging that private expertise, firms that have designed, built, and operated these plants around the world.
Do you have any idea why there's none in Houston?
I have some guesses. East Texas doesn't quite struggle with the lack of water like we do. So I would say some of it has to do with supply, although the demand growth there, you'd think they'd be looking at alternatives. I would assume we'll see it at some point on the horizon. And like Jorge mentioned, this is becoming something that's a lot more cost effective. In our cost models, energy isn't even the highest cost because that energy has come down so much. Chemical right now is what we're showing as the highest O&M cost. And then second to that is energy. So I don't know. I think that's a good question. I would guess that we'll see it more in South Texas first. And then from there, the process should also get easier at the state level as TCEQ starts to see more of these. We've got folks on the team that are kind of educating the regulators on how this should be addressed. And so that's an exciting place to be. And hopefully we can kind of grease the skids as more utilities across Texas look at this. I'll hand it back to Jorge.
Thank you, Jason.
Yeah, thank you.
Jason, and like Jason says, there is no exaggeration. We can continue talking about this for weeks and we wouldn't be done. Interestingly enough, the very first seawater desalination pilot plant in the state of Texas was conducted by Laguna Madre. And that fellow there was running it, right? So, interesting tidbit there. When you're a nerd in this industry, you capture all this stuff. So, we'll get back to this timeline. Jason shared with you how long it's taken to implement one of these projects. A lot of it has to do with the fact that it's new. It's a new thing for us. But a lot of it has to do with the client or the city getting a grasp of when do we do this. And there's always different opinions. Governing bodies change, and with that changes the priorities. So that is part of the process that we have. In other places, in Singapore is the one that is probably the prime example. They have a centralized government. Government says we want a seawater desal plant. And next year, no kidding, they are producing water. So for us, it's different. It's not a technical difficulties issue. We can treat any water, but it's all the other items, permitting and all that. So what you don't want to do, however, is have to do it in a hurry. because then that is going to get more expensive. You, with the reuse project that you're undertaking, you're buying yourselves time. You're stretching your supplies, and that's going to give you time with the work that you're doing with the Corps of Engineers. If there are some grants out there that are going to encourage you to look at this, you know, you might tap into those, so you don't have to do it in a hurry, but be mindful that it takes some time. It's taking us some time here in Texas to get one of these projects in place. Let's go to the next one. So the other thing that you're doing is reuse, and this is the Big Spring project, and in West Texas, and this is the very first municipal direct portable reuse facility in the United States, and the second in the world. And that is a project that Frisa Nichols designed and implemented. What you see here in the pink area, and is very similar to what you're trying to do here, okay? What you see in the slide of the pink area is the wastewater treatment facility. It ships around 2.5 million gallons a day to the purple area there on the bottom left corner. That is the advanced water treatment facility. And then the blue line is the effluent from that advanced water treatment facility going to augment a reservoir that feeds into the water treatment plant in Big Spring. And this is really a remarkable project. I signed off with Frisa Nichols about 3 years ago. And I always had thought, you know, why are you guys bragging about this project? Because it's really something unique. It is the very first, and there's one more here in the state, Wichita Falls. So this again has allowed the regulators to become more comfortable with what needs to happen with the direct portable reuse project. Right now, the legislature is considering a bill that is going to direct the TCEQ to develop guidelines for direct portable reuse. So that's something that what you guys are implementing your project might be, you're going to be receiving a lot of attention. I can guarantee you, because you know, this will be the first one here in the valley. The regional water plans, the Region M plan has about 5 projects that need to be implemented over the next 10 years, and you will be the first one. So that is an example. Let's go to the next slide. And again, not going to spend a lot of time on this slide. 2005, the feasibility study, 2013 production. These projects take time. So let's just keep the time frame. Let's go to the next one. I said that we were not going to get technical, and this is just to illustrate how similar the Big Spring project is to what you're trying to do here. So on the top line, you have your wastewater treatment process. I guess it's very close to what you have.
Yes.
Right? And then the wastewater effluent goes to the advanced water treatment plant. You're going to have membrane filtration, RO, and then ultraviolet oxidation for final treatment. You end up with a water quality that is probably better than the potable. And then you dump it in the raw water reservoir for additional, redundancy. You run it through your conventional water treatment plants. Well, your microfiltration water treatment. So that is the process. Again, you have reference points. You are not going out on a limb. This is already being done. So that's a safe one. Let's go to the next one. All right. Wanted to just put this slide here. Very simple. Is the steps in a project. You participate in the regional water planning process. I know you have contributed to it. It all begins with an idea, and eventually you produce it. That is going to be the theme of a workshop that we're going to be putting here in the Valley in September. It's going from idea to water production. For seawater and reuse, the planning and the feasibility stage takes a longer time than a conventional water plant. For all the reasons that Jason mentioned and I have mentioned, it takes some time. So just be aware of it. Now, once you have a pretty good idea where you're going, then you want to go and talk, okay, how do we finance this and how we implement it? With seawater desalination particularly, a common approach is to do design build. The reason why that approach works so well is because there are many firms out there that are extremely well qualified to do that. And you have the benefit of using competition for those guys to try and get your business. You derive the value of that competition. Let's go to the next slide. So Charles asked us to look at the Attorney General's bond authorization that you issued in 2010 and how to update that. Some of the background for this district, the Seawater Desalination, again, starting with the pilot study that you did back in 1997. And then several other studies. I was at the Water Development Board for some of those studies. I don't know if your board is fully aware of what you're doing with the Corps of Engineers, but
Just to go brief, as far as, they approached us as far as having some plan assistant grants out there. And so, we did a field visit around the harbor with the general manager at the navigation district, expressed an interest in having seawater intake project. And so, it looks like it had promised to be able to work under their plan assistance grants. So internally, we just had a face-to-face meeting a couple of weeks ago, and they got approved internally to release funds for their hydraulic groups, start writing the scope of it, for the study release. So we should be seeing their scope by the end of the month and start, passing out that master plan for the real intake analysis and discharge.
so yeah, that is one of the advantages again of having the luxury of time. You can fish for all those opportunities and they are making available. Now, what does the Seawater Desalination Project do for the hydro? Well, this gives you a drop through water supply. That's the bottom. It gives you the ultimate reliability, totally controlling the water. With regards to project financing, you have that project with the state water plan. So you could use the SWIFT funding, which right now is very low interest rate. There are some very competitive grants. Currently, the Bureau of Reclamation has a desalination line of funding that is very, very accessible. We're using that for the Untitled Water Supply Corporation project in Hidalgo County. We got him a $6 million grant for a $21 million grant. And I know the reclamation is always looking for acquiring more people apply for it. So there's project financing. It's not going to be free, but it's available. With regards to the project timing, one more time, Regional Water Plan has you guys doing that project by 2050. Given the, that's a long time, and it gives you more of an ability to really optimize whatever else you have, efforts in conservation, stretching your water rights, maybe getting more water rights if those are available. But ultimately, you're probably going to have to tap into this. And knowing, again, going back to the first slide with the sailboat, knowing what direction you're going makes you be more efficient. Let's go to the next one. So specifically, Charles asked us to look at the engineering report that goes with the bond authorization. And because you're making some changes to what you had originally gotten authorization from the voters, you will need to go back to the Attorney General and get the okay. So that will enable you to use authorized bonds for this project. The principle is still the same. You're not changing. You're not going to do anything else. We're still doing seawater desalination. We're still developing a drop-proof water source. You still have the need for water supply reliability. So the principle is the same. It hasn't changed. What is changing is the relocation for this. And in the draft that we have provided Charles for his review, for the bond council review, what you're doing here is giving the Attorney General the argument to supply this makes sense. And it makes sense for the district to move the facility here in several aspects. Number one, it allows you to leverage your infrastructure more efficiently. You will have a big complex of water, wastewater treatment that would allow you to use your personnel more efficiency, security, operations personnel, supervisory personnel. You're not going to have to be sending them all over the place, right? You will have that advantage. You would have the option of possibly using some of the facilities that you are upgrading in your water treatment plant number one. Maybe some of those conventional filters can be repurposed to be part of the treatment for your seawater desalination. In conjunction with some of the efforts that you have going on with lift stations and ground storage and elevated storage, then you can meet some of the goals of providing adequate service pressure-wise to the island, which was one of the arguments in the original bond authorization. All those things, I'm tiring you. I can see in your eyes you're asking questions, but all of those things we have laid out in that letter, just so the Attorney General will have all those arguments in favor of relocating. What works against the relocation is you will not have a water treatment facility in the island. You can pitch that against, you have it in the mainland. It's going to be more protected against hurricane impacts. And you are meeting the ultimate goal of providing adequate service. Let me stop there and see if you have any questions on this. That's the first deliverable that Charles has produced.
We talked both about desalination and the alternative reuse, right? Where are we on each of those? You know, which one are we more apt to go with? Which one are we actually? We only have bonds for the desalination, right? Not for the reuse.
Correct. Yeah, for reuse, there's no tax bond authorization for it, but it is, a lower cost option, and where we're looking around the 2025, 2030 timeframe versus 2050. And the Region M plan had that estimate of $4 million, but we need to be revising the numbers, which I think we've done that estimate. And then just right now, they have a grant opportunity, funding opportunity announcement being advertised with a deadline of April 23rd. So that's a chance.
So for next week.
Yes.
Okay.
So pretty much that's really what called this workshop is this grant opportunity where we could enter into an agreement with the Bureau of Reclamation and part of the Department of Interior, and it'd be a 75-25 cost share, with 75% being local, 25% being federal. And so that's really what we'll be considering for an action item today.
Are we aiming for 10% like they were talking about in Corpus?
Well, I mean, really, from the reuse standpoint, I would say it's just more based on our flows coming through the Portisco plant, which we're about 600,000-700,000 gallons per day, and then the highest we can get on our recovery after putting it through an RO process, that would be what we'd be able to return it back to where it's been.
Actually, it's going to be, that's an item in the application. When you say do next week, he asked us to work on this. That's right.
Yes.
We did. So we got you all of last night, and what percent of the water demand is going to be met by this project? It ranges between 12 and 15%. So it's an important number because the reclamation gets under this particular program is the big project, the big California project. So we need to make sure that they understand that this is a big impact project.
I'd just like to mention on the 2012 bond that we had, the desalination included in there, that the proposal was mentioned that the wastewater site was going to be upgraded for that part. So we already started on that project of reuse during the 2012 bonded improvement project for the wastewater site. And they were all mostly wastewater except the desalination. So again, going back on that, we've already done some percent of the reuse upgrades at the wastewater disposal. There's another 60% review or
Yeah.
75, between 60 and 70% is left to upgrade it.
Yes, since we completed that construction, we have actual costs from the areas that were identified as eligible portions of work in the feasibility study. We did the feasibility study back in 2015, so maybe that could be your marker for the timeline with Corpus. 2015 was our feasibility study, and we got this title, the 16 project approved through reclamation. And so out of the eligible work that's already completed, our actual cost have been 3.9 million for the portions of the sewer plant that have already been constructed. So we're trying to leverage that as part of our 25-75 cost share.
I was gonna talk about that.
We've spent 3.9 million already on studying the feasibility. So
No, the feasibility study was about 300,000, and it was 50% grant.
But we spent 3.9 million on feasibility and plant upgrades.
Well, I would say the plant upgrades as a whole, because we've done
That's sewer.
electrical upgrades, sewer upgrades, we probably spent about 10 million
Okay.
in the whole sewer plant. But as far as eligible portions of work, it's been 3.9.
So again, going back to the 2012 bond lecture, the desal was approved by the public. That was to be built in the island, but we've seen so many different things happening. We decided to clean up this area here, which is more efficient for everything because the water is available. The water treatment plant properties are available here. And there's a lot of positive things that we can utilize already that's existing here. Being unprepared up in the island with a hurricane that may hit it, and you never know what's going to happen after that. But here is where they're talking about having the Attorney General to change that location for that reason.
Yeah, some of the feedback, the comments we got from bond counsel on the draft letter to the Attorney General was why, what's preventing this facility from being built on South Lodge Ave? And I mean, the first response is the intake structure. We had Hurricane Dolly and Hurricane Ike hit during our pilot study, and between those two storm events, we lost our intake. It got pipelines were broken up. It's not the so it was really not prepared for testing. So basically, putting the site over here with a harbor and a dredge channel, and you get that protection under the structure.
So this is all having to do with seawater design. After this, you have the bond authorization, you want to change the location, you're doing the work with the board of engineers. This project is down the line. In the meantime, you can do something more cost effective, which is the reuse. Back to your question. So let me shift gears and just start talking about reuse. Background, you hired you prepared a master plan for the water reuse. That was completed in 2015. And what that project would do, for the Untitled Water District, is it would take your existing water rights, and instead of returning them to the ocean, you're going to take that effluent that you have already treated to some extent, and you're going to send it to an advanced water treatment plant, and you're going to be able to use that. So you're stretching your water rights. What it does, again, 12%, 15% of the water supply demand could be met with that project. That's so again, stretching the supplies. It is a very efficient approach for the district because we're again leveraging existing infrastructure. You're using your existing wastewater treatment plant. You're using the transmission system that you have connecting your surface water treatment plants and reservoirs. You can repurpose those transmissions, and you can also use pumping and conveyance. Again, you're tapping into your existing water.
It's financially, it's just getting your mind around the whole thing. So where's some other cities or locations that are going full of that?
You would be the first ones here in the
Vegas, they do it.
Every that or the city of Las Vegas.
People deserts like Las Vegas.
Big Spring.
Here in Texas is Big Spring. Again, that is the first.
And I saw, was the Big Spring the slide that we saw Knew there was a spring in it. Got the big part. So they only go up to 50%, right, of mixture, correct? They don't exceed that. What our goals be down here, hopefully far less than that.
That I don't know.
Yes, since our demand is about 4 MGD, and we're talking about we recover in 600,000. That's kind of the rough ratio.
Understood.
So like 10 to 15% based on.
I guess that's,
Yeah, so
we would produce an additional 12 to 15% water, but we'd only be mixing about 10 to 15%. Is that correct?
Right.
My math's a little slower than most.
Yeah, I would think maybe from a permitting standpoint, we want to maximize that mix of 50. But I mean, it's just to give some buffer. But for the most part,
And so,
Yeah,
yeah, stomach it literally, the only problem for me, but, money. So the money that we've already been approved for desalination, the 15 million change, is there anything written into that that's already been passed that would allow us to go this route and access that, or is that only for desalination?
it's specific for seawater is what's in the proposal. So that's where it, I think that's on this project.
That was my question.
But let's talk about the funding for this project. So you have done master plan. Some of the recommendations that were in that study, you have already implemented. One of the things that they said, you need to upgrade your wastewater treatment plant. You need to produce wastewater of a certain quality so you can use it for this process. There were also some maintenance issues that they recommended that you take care of, and I understand that you have to. So in terms of eligibility, there is a portion of this project that you have already executed. That is considered part of your match. When you go and apply for funding, when you go and apply for a grant, you have already spent some of this money,
Credit.
so you get some credit. Right?
How much credit? Can we quantify that tonight?
Basically, this particular program is 75-25. So for the total cost of the project, and this application would be around $60 million.
16?
16.
Yes, you said.
Yes, he said. So that's the total cost of the project that you are wanting to.
25% we need to find for that. And of that 25%, we would have roughly how much credit right now? You said get $1 million credit?
You need to find 75.
Oh, so they're on the hook for 25.
Yeah.
So how much credit do we currently have?
You have about $4 million that you have already spent.
So that's a third of about what we would need. Yes, we need about 12 million.
So you will need an additional roughly $8 million that you would need to, you could go to the Texas Water Development Board and apply for the SWIFT funding.
Yeah.
You're eligible for that because this project is in the state water plan. So that will give you the $12 million to match against the 25% that you could get from a grant.
So it's basically the reclamation project is roughly 8 million that we got to find versus, and this would be based on desalination being roughly around what, 45?
Yes, that 40 million was state plan. I mean, we'd have to quantify this.
For engineering for 7 years, it might be 45. So 45, we got 50 of that already. So we're looking at 30 versus, I mean, just,
Let me tell you, I think
something like
that I know what you're trying to do, but with the Seawater desal project, the numbers that you have are very old.
Old.
Those were produced in 2010.
Well, and that was a 13 million versus the 40 million. So it's, yeah.
Right. What you have in the state water plan is a different type of number, it's a different type of cost.
They use a
What you
different calculator. All right.
What you had in 2010 was produced by your engineer at that time. So that's what we would start. And if you cost trend that to today, that would be about 20 million. So
How many MGDs were we trying to produce with this?
that was one MGD.
One MGD was going to cost
That's 20 million.
One MGD was going to
the
cost.
220 million Corpus Christi project divided by the 20 that we're doing there, it comes out to 11 million per.
Yeah, it'll get more expensive the smaller volume.
All right, I know it's not that simple. We like talk numbers, really. I mean,
Yeah.
all the
Well, no,
pretty
listen,
pictures and stuff,
let's-
we just want to know the money.
Let's talk numbers. Back in 2010, it was nearly $14 million for one MGD. Okay, nearly $14 million back in 2010.
2010,
in 2010. So if
What's
we,
inflation?
if we
7%?
just cost index that to 2023, which is when your reuse project would be constructed, that would be close to 21 million. All right? Now,
For one
don't,
MGD?
don't take that to the bank because you will have some advantages by relocating your project here. You would be saving, you don't have to buy the land. You would have, again, some of the existing infrastructure that you can repurpose for the Seawater and South project. You may be able to tap into some of your existing discharge facilities. So there will be, and that is how that's laid out in the Attorney General's report. So those are things that are going to work in your favor. At the same time, the technology has improved.
Energy technology. Is that what we're talking about?
Everything. The membranes are more efficient. So that works in your favor. But at the same time, you know, those are all numbers. We are not updating those numbers, but just to get a gut feel for what this might be. That's what we do. But on this project, the numbers are more recent, 2015. So we had something more solid to work with. And the part of the project that you want to execute, we are trending that to $2023. You don't want to go with today's dollars because you're going to need this funding in 2023. So we cost index it to 2023, and that will be the $60 million that we're talking about.
60?
16.
16, we're talking about.
Let's go to the next one.
Thank you.
Jason, I want anything to add?
Or hey, you said I could interrupt. I don't know if Charles warned you, but I'll do that. We started this one late. I'd say 90 seconds, we're pretty much there, right?
Yes, sir.
You're ready to bring it home.
Okay, funding financial assistance. So this is all about your staff is going to ask you for authorization to submit this application. And it is a good funding opportunity. You need to be aware that you will need to come up with a 75%. In the application, we're laying out that you have already spent the $4 million. That counts as part of the 75. There is a clock on this grant. Can't remember what it is, but I think it's.
There's a clock that's tomorrow at midnight. Jesus.
No, I mean a clock to complete the work once they give you the grant.
Yeah.
Charles, to the point about April 23rd, it's a costing thing to submit what he says.
No,
It's
I mean,
just
that,
documentation, to keep the ball rolling.
it's an application to throw your hat in the ring. Give you opportunity. If we do
For
insurance,
for this.
yeah, the cooperative agreement would likely get executed September 30th, and then we have to complete the project by 2023 or request extension.
When money has to start being considered, like right now, we're talking about free documentation, continue to throw our hat in the ring. Sure, 9 days is fine. We want a lot more lead time when it's, time to start talking about real money.
Yeah, I would think if we get eligible, I mean, for the time to enter that cooperative agreement, like the September timeframe, I mean, that's when we'll really start to pay funds to.
September?
Yeah.
Yeah, wouldn't we anticipate if we're eligible?
I'm not
Like
sure.
we get it in for the 23rd, I mean,
Yeah, I'm not sure.
probably
when they would do
June,
it.
right? I mean, at least.
Yeah.
Well, they probably want to give you 3 months to really. All right,
So let me
I
start
would-
there.
I would encourage us to, and I'm sorry, Jorge. Once I get on the roll, I can't stop. So I would encourage us to obviously submit the paperwork, but I'd also encourage us to operate. We're going to continue to move forward in September, so we want to start looking at our finances in that manner. So we already have proactively been thinking of what we're going to do and what the next steps are, so that we're not left at a real short deadline, trying to make a real expensive decision. Does this make sense?
Yeah, and so this work has already been discussed in that the 3-year capital improvement plan workshop we had. We know he was analyzing the numbers. We've already, been considering this project. I mean, we might have to arrange our priorities, put this ahead of Isabanga to stay within our debt coverage, but I mean, we have a workable area to get.
Well, this wouldn't mess up buying the Chevy Traverse, would
I don't know. Put that in finance.
Hey, can we?
No, but for real. I lost my train of thought. we in trouble if we keep going here, Carlos? Do we have to end this workshop and start the next thing? We can always
We should
revisit
start the
this.
other one on.
We can revisit this. It's an agenda item, correct? So let's are you gentlemen gonna stay with us for a couple more minutes? Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
You
Thank
can
you,
even have it
everyone.
up.
And just continue it.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So can I just bring the workshop to a close? Do I have to do anything special? I adjourn that meeting of the workshop